Hey everyone, welcome back to Simply Satisfied, the podcast that's going to cut through all of the noise of more, and more. We're going to get to the heart of what actually makes life fulfilling. I'm Greg, and I have lived life at both extremes. Call me your guide, call me your guru, call me whatever you want to call me. But I've been there, rock bottom and dream destinations, only to find that satisfaction isn't about where you are, it's about who you are. Here on Simply Satisfied, we're going to unpack the mindset shifts, hard truths, and real life lessons that are going to lead to a life that is truly enough for you. So, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like life just hit you with a setback so big that you didn't know how to move forward? Like, no matter what you did, things just kept piling on and you just felt really stuck. I know that feeling pretty well. After I got out of prison, yes, I'm going to go there. I had a plan. I had a master plan. Reconnect with my son, start fresh, rebuild my life, gain my voice, which I'm doing right now. I thought that I was ready for whatever would come my way. What I didn't expect was how quickly things could and would go wrong. At first, I couldn't find steady work. Some people who said they would support me completely disappeared when things got hard. And no matter how much progress I made or was even thought that I had made, it felt like I was constantly being reminded of my past. Constantly. At one point, I started to believe that maybe this was just how life was going to be. One big uphill battle with no end in sight. Here's the big mindset shift that changed everything for me. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. I stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And I started asking, what can I do about it? That simple change in mindset took me from feeling powerless to finding solutions. Took me from looking at all my life's problems to looking at possible answers. Instead of dwelling on what I could not change, my past, people's opinions of me, opportunities I had lost, all the what ifs of life, I started focusing on what I could control. My effort, my attitude, my voice, and my next step forward. This shift hasn't just helped me survive. No, it's helped me grow. And that's what I want to share with you today. So in this episode, we're going to break down how to reframe your limitations as opportunities, why your response matters more than your circumstances, and I'm going to give you 5 practical steps that you can take when life feels like it's stacking the odds against you. All right? By the end of this episode, you guys are going to have a game plan to face whatever challenges come your way, whatever challenges you're dealing with right now, and maybe even turn those setbacks and challenges into setups for something greater. So stick with me, okay? My mindset shift from why me to what can I do about it. It sounds really simple. It sounds like, man, this dude didn't know this, right? However, it's not always the easiest thing to do. Especially when you're stuck in a cycle of setbacks that make you believe that nothing will ever change. Right? There's a story in the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. The story is called 3 Feet from Gold. And these guys went out to find gold back in the 1800s, and they started digging, and they found a little bit, and then they dug some more, and they dug some more, and they just dried out, right? So they sold all their equipment, went back home, and somebody went back to that exact same spot and found out that they were literally 3 feet away from one of the biggest gold mine discoveries of the era. And they had encountered setback after setback after setback after setback that eventually they just gave up, right? At some point, people go through enough challenges that they start to think that nothing's ever going to change, that this is how their life is going to be. It's going to be hard forever. But that is something that your mind is telling you. It's not fact, right? So let's start by understanding what a setback really is, what they really are. A setback isn't just a failure. It's an unexpected detour that forces you to stop and reassess and figure out your next move. Right? When you're playing chess and you got 4 moves planned out ahead and then your opponent does something you didn't expect, that's a setback. Because now you got to rethink. You got to rethink what you're going to do next. You thought you had his moves planned out. Then he moves something and you're like, "Whoa, I didn't see that coming. Now I got to think about it." That's a setback. Small one, but it's still a setback. When you're in the middle of a setback, it can feel like you're stuck in quicksand. The more you struggle, the more you fight it, the deeper you're going to sink. The hardest part isn't always the setback itself, though. It's what that setback makes you believe about yourself. It's not about what it makes you do. It's what it makes you believe about yourself. You see, setbacks have a way of planting subtle lies into our minds. And over time, those lies start to feel like facts. Maybe you fail at something once. I've been there. And suddenly you believe you're not good enough. Suddenly it's like, man, I'll never be good enough to do that because I failed. Or maybe you missed an opportunity. I've missed plenty of opportunities. And now you convince yourself that you'll never get another shot. So eventually you get to the point where you're just jumping at every opportunity because you don't want to miss it, right? Or maybe someone tells you that you're not capable of something and you start believing that. Crazy. Before you know it, all these thoughts turn into limiting beliefs and they're going to shape everything you do. I know because I've been there, right? After I got out, a little while back, I kept telling myself that I would never fully move forward. That no matter how hard I worked, I would always be the guy who went to prison. That belief showed up everywhere. It showed up in how I carried myself. It showed up in conversations where I would hold back because I didn't feel like my voice mattered, or I didn't feel like people wanted to hear that type of stuff. And even in moments when opportunities came my way, I would hesitate because I didn't believe that I deserved them. I would hesitate because I didn't believe that I deserved to do that. The crazy part was no one was actually telling me these things anymore. I was the one holding myself back. Here's the truth. Setbacks happen to everybody, even really successful millionaires and billionaires. The difference between staying stuck in a setback and moving forward is how those people respond to those limiting beliefs. Because here's the thing. All those thoughts, all those limiting beliefs, they are literally just stories. Stories that you've been telling yourself for so long that they feel like fact. But stories are just stories, and stories can be rewritten, right? Once I realized that you can rewrite a story, or your story, I started challenging all of my own limiting beliefs and thoughts. When my mind said, "You'll never get ahead," I asked, "What's one small step I can take today?" When my mind said, "No one will take you seriously," I asked, "What value can I bring to this situation?" Hence this show. Little by little, every question I asked started breaking down the mental walls that I had built. And I realized that my biggest limitation was not my past. It was the way I was thinking about my future. If you're feeling stuck right now, whether it's from failure or rejection or just feeling like you're not good enough at something, I want you to know this. Your setback is not the problem. It's the story you've attached to the setback that's holding you back. And if you could change that story, you can change everything else. So, setbacks, limiting beliefs, they're all mental roadblocks. They're going to make you feel stuck, right? How do we turn our biggest obstacles into stepping stones for growth? How do we reframe our limitations? Because this is where real change begins. But there's a step-by-step process I'm going to give to you. The first step is you got to recognize the story you are telling to yourself. You have to get honest with yourself about the story you've been believing, right? See, when a setback happens, we tend to create a narrative around it. That narrative shapes how we respond. If you believe a certain thing about what's going on around you, you're going to respond in a certain type of way, right? For example, let's say you lose your job. The setback itself, painful. Anyone who's ever lost a job knows it sucks. It's like, I've never known anybody to get fired or get let go. People quit and they feel better, but get fired or get let go and they're like, man, like right away they walk out of the office, they're like, man, I'm so happy. It sucks. It's painful. But the bigger problem is the story that starts forming in your head, where you start telling yourself things like, I'm not valuable, I'll never find another opportunity, I'm just not good enough. That story, it's like putting a filter over your life. Suddenly, everything you see confirms that belief. But here's the truth. Just because a thought shows up doesn't mean it's true. Just because a thought pops into your head does not mean that you have to give it value. Right? Go back to the story I told you. When I first got out, I was trying to build momentum. I had done all these steps, but every time I hit a wall, whether it was someone not responding to my messages or just a plan falling through with somebody, my mind would go straight to, this is pointless. I will forever be the guy who screwed up his life. That's how people are going to know me. And that thought showed up every time. One day, instead of just accepting it, I looked back on everything I had learned during my experience, and I said, why am I accepting this thought? I literally have done all the work to not do this anymore. So I challenged it. And I asked the exact same question. Why am I accepting this thought? I said, what if that's not true? Instead of saying to yourself, I'm not valuable, I want you to say, I'm building value one step at a time. Instead of saying, this is pointless, I want you to say what I asked myself. What's one thing I can do today that is productive towards my future? That one shift, challenging my own story, stopped me from spiraling, because we all know we can spiral. It didn't make things easier overnight, but it gave me momentum. And momentum is one of the most important things you can have in your life, because it creates change. Step number 2 is focus. This is a huge one. Focus on what you can control. Right? Once you challenge your limiting belief, once you start asking better questions, the next step is to shift your focus. Once you gain momentum, which is super important, another super important part of your life is focus. When people learn how to focus, people really learn how to do what they want to do. When life feels overwhelming, it's easy to obsess over things you cannot control. That is you losing focus. Like people's opinions, past mistakes, circumstances that didn't go your way. Literally everything that is outside of your control is you losing focus. The key to breaking free from that cycle is to focus on what is in your control. Here's a simple question that helped me through some of my hardest moments. What is one thing right now that I can control? When somebody gets mad at me, I cannot control their anger. What is one thing I can do that I can control? Right? For me, that meant focusing on the effort I was putting in, even when nobody noticed, the actions I took, even when nobody was looking, or even when I thought nobody was looking, right? Taking responsibility, the attitude I brought to situations, even when things felt unfair, the way I showed up, even when I didn't know how people would respond. Every time I shifted my focus to what I could control, I felt like I was taking my power back. But here's the truth. Your circumstances may limit your options, but they can't control your response. And your response is what shapes your future. Step number 3 is find the hidden opportunity. All right, here's where things get really powerful. Your setbacks often come with hidden opportunities. I'll say that again. Your setbacks often come with hidden opportunities. I know that sounds cliche, but hear me out. Most of the growth in my life did not come from things going right. It actually came from things going wrong. Losing a job, that can force you to develop new skills or take a path you wouldn't have considered in the first place. Going through a breakup, this can push you to build a stronger sense of identity, self-confidence. Facing rejection, that can teach you resilience if you're willing to lean into it, right? Even prison, as hard as that season was for me, it's probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me. It forced me to slow down, forced me to reflect, forced me to develop skills that I didn't even know I had. I learned how to draw. Didn't even know I could do it. It gave me time to journal, to reflect, to be grateful, show gratitude. It gave me time to start building a mindset that would help me long. It's going to help me forever. Long after I got out. Now, I wouldn't wish that experience on anybody. I would not want anybody to have to go through that to get to this mindset. However, I would not trade what I gained from the experience either. Because the truth is, sometimes our greatest opportunities are disguised as obstacles. And if you can learn to look for those moments, you're gonna find them. Here's what I want you to take away from this part. Your thoughts are not facts. Challenge the stories that limit you. Control what you can. You can't control everybody else. Control what you can, because those small actions that you can control are going to create momentum. And then look for the hidden opportunity. Your setback might just be the setup for something greater. Who knows? Unless you're looking for it. So, what are some practical steps you can take? What are some actionable steps on the power of response that you can take right now? Well, I'm going to give them to you. Here are 5 steps to move forward after a setback. All right? Now that we've looked at reframe your mindset, we're going to look for opportunities. Here are the 5 steps. Number 1, pause. Assess your situation. This is one of the hardest. It's literally just to pause. Life is going to punch you in the face. And yes, I just paused for dramatic effect. Life is going to punch you in the face. Your natural reaction is going to be to panic, react emotionally, or to start spiraling in frustration. But that knee-jerk reaction, your natural instinct, is only going to make things worse. In public speaking, they tell people, if you're going to say what's called a filler word, but, so, when people are speaking and they get to that point when they're at a sentence, but they don't want to start their next one, they'll go, so, their mind is starting to panic. And they're filling that with a word. But this first step is not just for speaking. This first step is for life. If you can get to a point when you don't know what's next, you don't know what you're going to do next, and you meet it with a pause instead of a panic, life's going to change. So, force yourself to hit pause. even for just a moment, and assess your situation. Ask yourself, what's actually happening here? What's in my control and what's not? What next step makes the most sense? When I was trying to reconnect with my son after getting out, every time I felt like I was making progress, something would come up. Miscommunication, delays, moments where I felt like I was being pushed away. My old reaction was to get frustrated. And the old me would have definitely said things I would have regretted. Eventually, I had to learn to stop and ask myself, what's actually happening here? Was I frustrated? Yeah, absolutely. Did I feel like things were unfair? Of course. But was that frustration going to help me build trust and connection? Not at all. Pausing gave me space to respond intentionally, and that changed everything. Literally. Step number 2, ask better questions. I can't remember who said it, but there's a famous saying that says the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask, right? And there's another quote that says, if you believe you know everything, then you're not asking good enough questions. Once you paused, once you did step number 1, the next step is to ask better questions. Our brains are wired to answer whatever question you give it. So if you ask negative questions, you'll get negative answers. It's not like multiplication. You can't ask 2 negative questions and get a positive. For example, ask yourself, why does this always happen to me? Your brain will come up with reasons that make you feel powerless. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can do right now to improve this situation? And suddenly your brain starts finding solutions. It's weird, ain't it? When you start rebuilding your life, don't ask, why won't anyone give me a chance? Because all you're going to find is excuses. That's what I found. When I started asking, how can I create my own opportunity? That's when I started making progress. Started creating content. Started building connections. Started focusing on what I could bring to the table. Better questions lead to better answers. And better answers lead to better outcomes. That's step number 2. Step number 3, let's break it down. That's literally the step, break it down. Big problems are going to feel overwhelming. And that's what keeps most people stuck, is that feeling of overwhelm, that feeling of, I can't do this. But here's the thing. No matter how big the challenge is, there's always a small first step you can take. No matter how big the staircase, you can always take the first step. I remember sitting in the dorm. I was in dorms, open dorm. We didn't have cells. With this overwhelming list of things I knew I needed to do when I got out. It's like a bucket list all over again of starting fresh. And it felt impossible because I had wrote down a lot of things. So I broke it down. Instead of thinking, how am I going to fix everything? How am I going to get back and reconnected? I asked, what's one small thing I can do today? Or what's one small thing I can do on the first day? So while I was in there, I asked every single day, every single morning, I asked, what's one small thing I can do today? What's one letter I could write? One book I could read? One conversation I could have? Those small steps didn't feel like much at the time, but they started stacking up. And over time, they built momentum. So if you're feeling stuck right now, stop focusing on the entire staircase. Stop focusing on the huge, giant mountain in front of you. Just focus on the next step in front of you. Step number 4, embrace the process. One of my old, really good friends, he was actually my second bunkie. His mantra was to stay uncomfortable. And I know that that's David Goggins' mantra as well, but to stay uncomfortable. And part of embracing the process is you have to embrace it even when it's uncomfortable. Here's a truth that's really tough to hear. Growth never feels good in the moment. We all like to believe that progress should feel smooth, like we're winning every single day. But real change, it is very uncomfortable and it is messy. Think about working out. Classic example, right? The discomfort and soreness you feel during a workout is not a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that your muscles are being challenged, and that challenge is what makes you stronger, correct? It's the same with life. When you're working on yourself, stepping out of your comfort zone, or rebuilding after a setback, it is supposed to feel hard. It is supposed to feel hard. Give yourself permission to let it feel hard, to let it be difficult. But being difficult doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It actually means you're growing. If something is challenging, that means that you're actually getting something out of it. The key is learning to sit with that discomfort instead of running from it. And last but not least, step number 5. Build your resilience muscle. Now, there's no actual muscle in the body that has to do with resilience. If there was, I don't know, it'd probably be the calf muscle. But build your resilience muscle, okay? You have got to treat resilience like a muscle because that's exactly what it is. The more you practice pushing through challenges, the stronger you're going to get. That's just true of life. So I'll repeat that. The more you practice pushing through challenges, the stronger you're going to get. The more you practice public speaking, the better speaker you're going to become. The more you practice sales, the better salesman you're going to become. The more you work out, the better fitness person you're going to become. That's just a fact of life. Every time you face a setback and you choose to respond with action instead of wallowing in self-pity and defeat, you're training your resilience muscle. Every time you silence that inner voice that says, I can't, and take one small step forward, you're building resilience. When I learned how to draw, the first few drawings, I'd literally make a mistake, crumple up the paper, throw it away, and be like, I'm never going to learn how to draw. I don't know how to draw. I can't draw. That is actually behind, I'm not a morning person. I'll never be able to draw is, I think, the second, it might be the second biggest limiting belief that most people have. And I not only went through it myself, but I watched other people break down that limiting belief and learn how to draw that could not draw a circle or a square. So every time you silence that inner voice that says, I can't, you're building resilience. And just like in the gym, consistency is key. Doesn't matter how hard you go, it matters how often you do it. You don't build strength by working out once. You don't get bulky by lifting one weight. You don't lose 30 pounds by going for one run. You build it by showing up over and over and over again. The same goes for mental strength. Every time you respond with intention, you're rewiring your brain to face. The same goes for mental strength. Every time you respond with intention, you're rewiring your brain to face future challenges with more clarity, more confidence, and more courage. So here's what I want you to do. Here's a challenge for everybody listening out there. Think about one setback that you've faced recently. Something that's been frustrating, overwhelming, discouraging, whatever. Now, instead of replaying all the reasons why it's difficult, ask yourself, what is one thing I can control in this situation? And then also ask yourself, what's one positive step I can take today? It doesn't have to be big, just something small enough to get you moving. That's it. Just something small. Because momentum doesn't come from waiting. It comes from action. I want to leave you with one last thing. Setbacks are going to happen, no matter how hard you try to avoid them. Life is going to throw things at you that you never expected. And sometimes it's going to feel like everything and everyone is working against you. But here's what I've learned. You cannot always control what happens to you. But you can always control how you respond. And how you respond, that's where your power is. Every time you choose to pause instead of panic, every time you ask a better question instead of spiraling in self-doubt, every time you take one small step forward instead of giving up, you're proving to yourself that your setback does not define you, your response does. I know because I've lived it, and I can tell you from experience, your lowest moments, your greatest weaknesses, can become your greatest turning moments. I know because I've lived it. And I can tell you from personal experience, your lowest moments, your biggest weaknesses can become your greatest turning points if you choose to respond with purpose. So, take that setback, the one you've been avoiding or overthinking, and write it down. And right next to it, write down one small action you can take today. Just one to move forward. Maybe it's a phone call you've been putting off. Maybe it's starting that workout plan you keep delaying. Maybe it's having a hard conversation you've been avoiding. Whatever it is, choose one step and then just take it. Because you don't have to fix everything overnight. But if you keep showing up step by step, you'll get stronger and you'll get better. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you guys with one final thought. Just a reminder, everything we talk about on this podcast, from mindset shifts to life lessons, comes back to one simple truth. Satisfaction isn't about having more. It's about learning to make the most of what you already have. It's not about waiting for life to be perfect or for your circumstances to change. It's about showing up today as you are, where you are, and deciding to take ownership of your mindset, your actions, and your future. That's what Simply Satisfied is all about. Finding peace, finding purpose, finding fulfillment in the small, consistent steps you take every day. It's a reminder, your setbacks don't define you. Your response does. And no matter what you're facing right now, no matter what challenge you're going through, you're stronger than you think. And your next step is closer than you realize. If this episode encouraged you or you've heard something that resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready for more simple solutions to living a fulfilled life, hit that follow button. Follow me on Instagram. Follow the show on TikTok. Everybody keep smiling, keep striving. That's the mantra. Keep smiling, keep striving, and I will see you guys next time right here on Simply Satisfied.